letter from the Gantry.
Neil, thank you. Yeah, we're going to start on a topical note. So ends one of the major and very memorable statistics regularly trotted out by football commentators. No longer Newcastle United have not won a major domestic trophy since 1955. That the hoodoo was broken 70 years later has a really nice ring to it. Destiny, maybe. Congratulations to the Geordie nation. For many, it will be Newcastle's first domestic trophy of a lifetime, but not for everyone. The first radio commentary of a football match I believe I ever heard was the 1952 FA Cup final. In those restrictive times, only the second half was covered live by BBC Radio. Newcastle versus Arsenal. I remember the description of a catalogue of injuries to the Gunners and that George Robledo, a Chilean-born, Yorkshire-brought-up striker, won the game near the end. It was a fascinating name for a young ears. I was 6 at the time. This turned out to be the last FA Cup final not broadcast live on television. Newcastle were lifting the cup for a second year in a row, and in 1955 they made it 3 triumphs in the competition in 5 seasons. Now 9, I was glued to our TV screen from the very start, just as well as the Magpies' iconic forward Jackie Milburn, War Jackie, scored at Wembley after just 45 seconds against Manchester City. Newcastle romped home 3-1. And that was that until March the 16th this year. But there have been a fair number of near misses along the way. In 1974, I was the junior of a legion of ITV reporters covering Newcastle reaching the FA Cup final after a gap of 19 years. There have been plenty of recent recollections of that match because the opposition was, like now, Liverpool. Malcolm MacDonald, Super Mac, was the star, and I interviewed him a week or so before the final about himself and his teammates. We then did additional filming of those who had outside interests for the build-up to the actual game. For example, goalkeeper Willie McFall was a skillful carpenter. Defender Frank Clark played the guitar. Malcolm's strike partner, John Tudor, ran a driving school. Different times. The club decided to take the players to London on the Tuesday before the game to escape the pressures at home. By the Thursday, they were bored to tears. On the Saturday, they were comprehensively beaten 3-0. A young Kevin Keegan was Liverpool's star. No one that day could anticipate the massive influence he would have on Newcastle United subsequently as player and manager. In 1976, it was the League Cup final, Newcastle's first, which led to a Wembley return and further disappointment. A 2-1 defeat to Manchester City, whose decisive goal came from a spectacular overhead kick from Dennis Stewart, Newcastle born, a Newcastle fan as a boy, who'd won the FA Cup 3 years earlier with, of all clubs, Sunderland. Now under Kevin Keegan, Newcastle came second in the Premier League in 1996 and 1997, the entertainers, but never award-winning in the silverware stakes. Then followed 2 successive runners-up in the FA Cup in the 2 following seasons. In 1998, Kenny Dalglish's team came up just short against Arsenal, who completed a League and Cup double in Arsene Wenger's first full campaign in charge. It was the first FA Cup final shown live on Sky Sports, and I recall Alan Shearer hitting the post when a goal would have made it 1-1. A teenage Nicholas Anelka made it 2-0 shortly afterwards. Newcastle and Shearer were back in 1999, but not Dalglish, who'd been succeeded by Ruud Gullit. As a commentator, you usually get a sniff of the lineup before the big day, but not on this occasion. More significantly, neither did the Newcastle players, pretty much until they arrived at Wembley. The uncertainty showed. Again, they faced the champions, Manchester United this time. Again, they lost 2-0, and United went on to complete their treble by beating Bayern Munich in the Champions League final. Just 2 years ago, it was Manchester United again in the League Cup final. Again, it was a 2-0 defeat. The chances of lifting the trophy somewhat scuppered by a goalkeeping crisis. First choice Nick Pope suspended. Regular deputy Martin Dubravka cup-tied from a loan to Manchester United, no less. And crazily, he got a winner's medal. Third choice Loris Karius had played in the Champions League final for Liverpool, but was understandably undercooked. This was his Newcastle debut. Pitfalls of the past meant these downfalls on the brink of success. This time there was a more kindly twist of fate. A sinkhole suddenly emerged in southwest London on the pitch at AFC Wimbledon, where Newcastle were due to begin their Carabao Cup campaign. At short notice, the tie was switched to St James's Park. Newcastle only just scraped through with a penalty. Who knows what might have happened if it had been played as drawn out as an away game. The League Two club had already knocked out Premier League Ipswich there. However, the subsequent elimination of Chelsea, Brentford and Arsenal and now Liverpool is clear evidence that the best team has won. Finally, it's been a fully joined-up journey. Eddie Howe, first and last to leave his workplace every day, has been rewarded not just for his constant endeavour, but for his very perceptive management. His loyal staff and a group of shrewdly recruited players have delivered the goods. Nor has it been a spendfest from their super-rich ownership. Football's financial regulations have kept that in check. It was emphatically Newcastle United's day at Wembley, followed by celebrations with more than a nod to the frustrations of the past. 70 years, almost worth the wait.
Couple of things out of that. Do you remember seeing Jackie Milburn?
Oh, yes, yeah.
What was he like?
Well, he was an all-purpose forward. He could play as the man up front. In the 1955 Cup final, I don't think he wore the number 9. Vic Keeble was the player who wore it then, and Jackie was number 8. So he had more than just that touch in front of goal and that association with the iconic Newcastle number. So, an international player. There were a lot of players around competing to play in the England team at that time, and of course, no substitutes as we've seen so often in these games. In that 55 Cup final, I believe Manchester City had an injured player, Jimmy Meadows, I think it was. So they sort of limped through with 10. I had to just check the facts on the 52 game, but I do really remember hearing it on the radio. Arsenal, in fact, finished with 7 fit players. Really? So sometimes your luck's in. And I suppose if you say they used up a fair bit of luck winning those 3 trophies in 5 seasons, 3 FA Cups, they paid for it with a long wait until they finally got some silverware in their hands again. I really play. I mean, listen, you support Chelsea, I support Woking, but we love football. We love the lack of the fact that the same thing happens over and again. We love these occasions which are special. So I think, apart from the Liverpool fans, and to be fair, Liverpool have got nothing to be ashamed of in their performance or the fact they've had a tough week. It's still a fantastic season for them. But I think the rest of the world were black and white for the day, you know.
Yeah, I also remember when Liverpool beat them in the 74 Cup final. You might not have seen this as you were working there, but in the post-match interviews, I can't remember which station it was on, Kevin Keegan was interviewed with Emlyn Hughes, who was the captain, and Emlyn Hughes was kind of a little bit over the top and said we absolutely stuffed them, or was quite dismissive of Newcastle. And Keegan went, "Oh, hang on, we don't talk like that." And Keegan put Emlyn Hughes captain in his place because Keegan had certain standards that maybe Emlyn Hughes didn't at the time. So,
but it was a very one-sided final, and I'm sure, and I've spoken to a lot of the players from that time over the intervening years, that they definitely shouldn't have gone on the Tuesday. No. And that was I can understand why, because the pressure in Newcastle last week would have been enormous, and Eddie got them to a place of retreat but not that early. Of course, they played on Monday night. I saw them play on and win. That was a really significant thing, Neil. I had a bit of a gut feeling from that it might be Newcastle's week. The celebrations at the final whistle of winning 1-0 away at West Ham for a Premier League game. Obviously, they're trying to get in the Champions League through placings in the league. But there were real. It was not exactly over the top, but it sort of had a feeling that they were thinking about the week ahead and what it might mean to actually win that game.
I've got a war going on here between my cats. Someone get rid of that horrible cat.
It's quite hard talking to a camera when this fight between man and cat is going on in my eye line, but I hope you understood what I said and it made sense for once.
Okay, that was just Tamori trying to mark Tammy Abraham.